When I was 20 years old, I had a close encounter with an extraterrestrial being in a sleepy town in mid Wales, in, of all places, a DIY store slash garden centre in the middle of the day, in the middle of the summer. I was 20 years old. I met an alien. I don't know how else to put it. And I've never really talked about this before, especially not publicly, not openly. But I'm going to now. It was a very hot day. It was maybe July, maybe early August, somewhere around that time. I'm not really sure. I was working on the checkout. There was a big queue. It was very, very hot. I was bored out of my mind. It wasn't a bad job. I just didn't like it. And, when you're working in a boring job, anything that kind of stands out to you, well, you latch onto it. You need some stimulation. And I was scanning these objects, and I noticed in my peripheral, just past the queue, there were a pair of silver legs, as in this person was wearing a tight-fitting silver kind of leggings. But that's not what really caught my eye or my attention. It was the fact that I could have sworn her, I'll get to that bit, legs were bent the other way. The knee joint was not outwards as ours are. It seemed odd to say this purely because why else would you? There's no frame of reference. We don't know any differently. The knee joint was the inwards. At least I was certain of this, and I just couldn't. I had to kind of do a double take, but this person walked past the queue and I couldn't see. I couldn't move from and I just thought maybe it's just me. In any case, I'm going to catch this person when they walk back again, and I made sure of this in my mind. And the one thing that kind of reassured me that I'll get some answers was because the entrance and exit, the only entrance and exit, was to my right and behind me a little bit. Now, that's not to say there weren't other fire exits and things, but the only way in and out of the shop for the public was just this one main entrance with the security barriers that didn't really do anything, and no one paid attention to anyway. So I was scanning these objects, and sure enough, I saw again these legs, and I made a real point to move my head and look upwards and answer these burning questions. But I couldn't move my head. I couldn't move my body. All I could move were my eyes, and I continued to scan object after object. And I was so out of control that I was frustrated. I was even a bit upset, and I don't know how long this went on for, but I could only move my eyes, and I was looking around as much as I could to gain some more answers. It was, I can't even put it into words. I wasn't in control of my body, but I was doing things. And everyone in that queue was looking down. They were sort of stationary, and no one was talking. It was just like people were kind of stuck in time, frozen. And, no one was on their phones back then. People had phones, but no one was really using them. You ring and got rung, or maybe played Snake. There wasn't anything you could really do with your phones back then. It feels odd to even have to say that, and I'm sure a lot of you would get that. And I don't know how long this went on for, in this infuriating state of frustration at my body, just mechanically, automatically doing this thing, and my body turned. I didn't turn my body. My body turned towards the only entrance and exit. And as it did, I was waving and looking directly into the eyes of an extraterrestrial being. I wasn't in control of my body. I was waving, but it wasn't me that was doing it. I was looking directly into this person's eyes, but I hadn't made the conscious effort or choice over my own movements. And this being was looking directly back at me, doing exactly the same thing. She was maybe 5'5", something like that. And she had red bobbed hair. Kind of like Thelma from Scooby-Doo. She had large black almond eyes and a sloping kind of head into a pointy chin. She was very attractive. She didn't look like your typical kind of grey that, is perceived in mainstream sort of pop culture. She didn't look all that dissimilar, I suppose, with the exception of her legs bending the other way. But she certainly stood out. She certainly wasn't human, but she was very attractive. And she had this kind of silver one-piece suit on, very tight-fitting. She was certainly a she. There's just no doubt about it. And she was waving at me, and I was waving at her simultaneously. And in that instant, I felt love. I felt love. I felt like I loved her, and I felt love from her, and I just had so many questions. So much within me wanted to know and find out more and experience more. I couldn't believe it was too much in that one instant. I wasn't ready for that. And my body turned back again, and I was moving objects again. I was scanning objects again. I was doing the same thing I was before, although again, I didn't have control over my own body. I wasn't consciously making this automated effort to scan things. Why would I care at that point? And all I wanted to do was run out of the shop, find out more. Who was this person? Where did they come from? What did they want? Why were they there? Why did they feel the feelings I felt? What was happening? What was going on? And I couldn't. All I could do was carry on. And I was so frustrated. I was actually at this point almost hysterical, but I couldn't express it. I couldn't move. And tears started rolling down my face. The only thing I could move again were my eyes. And again, still people were just sort of, looking down, not really moving. They were moving along in the queue, but just very slowly. And it was so frustrating and odd and surreal. I still find it very difficult to explain and understand even now. All I wanted to do was run out of that shop, and eventually, slowly, I gained, control over my body, and I as soon as I could, I dropped what I was doing and I ran out of the shop. And obviously no one was there. I tears streaming down my face, and all customers are looking at me at this point. I suppose we all gain control of our bodies at the same time. I don't know. And the funny thing is, I knew where she went. Behind the store was a rugby field. There was a lane that led down a hill to a rugby field, a flat kind of plateau of a field. And I'm certain that she went down there, got into a craft, if you like, a vehicle, and left. And the other thing, and this is perhaps the most bizarre and seemingly minor detail, is I'm certain she came into that DIY store for a packet of copper screws. It's very specific. Not just any old screw, but it wasn't the screws that she needed. It was the metal itself. For some reason, it was a necessary resource that just, it was accessible for whatever reason. And I know that sounds odd. Maybe it's not the oddest thing about this tale. I say it's the truth. But I had this feeling, and I can only assume that the reasons for those feelings were in part that's how telepathy works. That's how this kind of information of transferring from one brain to another, it works. It's through feeling. You don't hear a word, you feel a feeling. That's how telepathy works. At least I'm convinced of that now. And maybe it wasn't her intention to tell me why she was there. I just had that feeling. I don't understand it fully, and I don't think I ever will, but that's what happened to me when I was 20. That's my encounter of a very close kind with an alien. So that's that. I don't know. Make of that what you will. I don't really care if people want to believe or ridicule. That's up to you. That's your prerogative. But this is what happened, and it blew my mind, and it changed my perspective of not just the world, but the universe as a whole. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you've had any mad encounters. Thanks for watching.